everybody. You guys hear me okay? All right, fantastic. Well, thanks for having me. So my name's Casey, and I work at Greylock Partners. Basically what I do is I help companies like those in the audience with growth challenges. But things that I've done that you've probably heard of more is my work at Pinterest and at Grubhub. How many people have used Grubhub in the audience? Okay, nice, more than I expected. And how many Pinners in the audience? How many Pinterest users? Okay. Has anyone taken money from Greylock in the audience? No? Okay, we need to do a better job at that. I've only been there 9 months. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about today is some lessons I've learned at both Grubhub and Pinterest that have applied across companies to help the companies grow. So I'm just going to get right into it. Start with the first one. So the first one is that retention comes from maniacal focus on improving the core product. And what that means is it's more likely to drive retention increases by reducing friction in the core product than from adding features to it. Your default mechanism as a product person or a marketing person or a salesperson is to add the feature that the customer talks about. Adding features rarely increases retention of users immediately, and usually it has the opposite effect because while you're adding that feature for the customer that's already using the product, it makes the product a lot harder to use for all the new people coming in that are just trying to get the basics. And I'll show some examples of that. Okay, so if you want to improve the core product, how do you do that? Well, the first thing, which you're probably all familiar with, is you look at the data. You look at how people are using the product. The second thing, which I've seen a lot of teams not necessarily do as well, is do qualitative research. Because the data tells you what people are doing, but it doesn't tell you why they do it. And I'll show some examples of finding retention wins at both companies using both data sets. So let's start with Grubhub. So we were trying to figure out how to increase retention, how to get people to use the product more often. And this graph is a graph of the conversion rate to ordering food in Boston by how many search results we showed people when they typed in their address. So you'll notice something interesting here, that up until about 50 restaurants, the conversion rate hovers around 12%. As soon as you hit past 55 restaurants, the conversion rate goes over 20%. And essentially what we figured out by looking at our data was that if you end up showing more restaurants than people think exist that deliver to their house, their apartment, their work, their likelihood of ordering food and their likelihood of ordering food more frequently basically doubles. So when we found this out, our goal from a sales perspective was how do we get as many people as possible more than 55 online ordering results when they search their address. So for Boston, it's like, okay, we're doing that in North End. Let's do that in Brookline. Let's do that in Allston. And it gave our sales team an understanding of where they could sign up restaurants that would be more likely to add value to the business and add value to our users. So that's an example of looking at the data, but how about learning something qualitatively? Well, we got in the habit of talking to our users on the phone all the time at Grubhub. And one of the things they would tell us was that it's expensive. And we were like, well, that's weird. We actually don't charge you. We charge the restaurant. But what they meant is that delivery in itself is expensive. You order food, and there's a $20 minimum, a $15 minimum, maybe a $3 delivery fee on top of that. It's hard for you to justify it as a regular way to cure your hunger. It becomes more of a luxury. And we wanted this not to be a luxury product. We wanted it to be something anyone could use anytime they're hungry. So what we did is we went back to our restaurants, and we said, hey, we know you have these higher minimums or higher fees to cover your cost, but we think that if you're able to lower your minimums and lower your fees, you can make more volume that will make up on the smaller margin per order. So why don't you try it out for a couple weeks, and if we can't show you enough increased volume to make up for the slower margins, then you can turn it back. And essentially we tried it with this restaurant in Chicago, and they immediately jumped to the top restaurant in Chicago when they were just basically a middle-of-the-road restaurant. And then we built a case study around that to go to all the other restaurants and say, okay, here's what Arazu, a Costa Rican restaurant, did to become the #1 restaurant on Grubhub. Don't you want to try that as well? And basically we were able to steadily lower minimums and fees over time. Okay, so that's a Grubhub example. How about Pinterest? So with Pinterest, Pinterest is a lower intent product. You're not using it because you're hangry. You've heard about it. You're not exactly sure what it is, but you're willing to check it out as long as it's not a hassle to get up and running. So we had to get people to the product value as fast as possible, but not faster. And what do I mean by not faster? It means if you need to understand something about the user for them to actually find value when they get into the product, you should ask for that. But everything else, you should try to remove from the product just so they can get in and experience the value. So in this particular example, you see a sign-up flow and then asking people what they're interested in. If we didn't ask people what they're interested in, then they would get a feed of popular stuff, which worked very well if you were another Midwestern mom. But if you were a dude, or if you were a woman on the coast, you would see stuff that didn't matter to you, and you would think the product wasn't for you. When the truth was, we had content and things in thousands of topics, but we had to learn what it was. So we added this topic picker, where you see I picked astronomy, and we made you pick 5 of them. We need to know what you are interested in order to deliver a good home feed experience, so we asked that. But in the flow before, we used to ask for a ton of things. We used to ask for your name, your age, your email address, your gender. And what we did over time, and your password. And what we removed over time is we pre-populated the email address on most versions of Android. When you use that email address, we would read the name of that email address on the phone, so it would say, hey, Eva Milo, instead of saying, hey, type in your name. We got rid of passwords because a password is a relic of the web for security. If we already know you're on your phone, that's a better indicator of your security than a password. And then we made age and gender optional. So essentially, for most Android users, they can literally do nothing and get into the product. All they have to do is give us topics. And that was a systematic refinement of the friction over time. OK, another thing about Pinterest is we tried to reduce the friction that distracts from the product value over time. So in this left-hand example was how Pinterest looked historically. So you would see an image, which we call a pin. You would see a description of the pin by the user that pinned it. You would see Casey pinned this to this board. And what we found in user testing was that people were getting distracted by all the features in the feed. They didn't know what a board was yet. They didn't know who Casey Winters was. So why were we showing them all this stuff? So after we did that research, we went back and said, hey, let's remove all this stuff from the product and focus on getting them to the aha moment, which is seeing cool stuff in topics they cared about. So you'll notice on the right here, there is a lot more imagery on the screen at one point in time. So we maximized by getting rid of the description, by getting rid of where the pin came from and who pinned it. We're able to increase the amount of pins we're able to show on the screen at one time, which increased the chances that you would find something that you're interested in, that you would repin, and then you would retain. And this worked very well, and this is literally just deleting features in a product. It's very simple product work. OK, another retention win from simplifying. Not being afraid to educate contextually. There's a very common saying in the Valley, at least, I don't know if you guys hear it up here, that if a design needs education, it's a bad design. That sounds very pithy, it sounds very smart, but it's actually very dangerous to apply. My counter-argument to that would be a design with education is better than a design does not educate. If you need to introduce some education to help people know what to do, you should do that. And at Pinterest, we did that, and we saw increases in activation rates from doing it. So you can see here, you're on the first screen after you've added topics. It tells you to scroll to see more. Once you've scrolled, it says tap any pin to see a closer look. When you get to a pin, there's a pulsar over the save button indicating that you can save this for later. All of these things help the user understand what to do next, and they helped increase our retention. OK, so that's a bunch of retention opportunities that I've pointed out that have made sense across Grubhub, across Pinterest. What about acquisition? So for acquisition, one thing that's worked at both Pinterest and Grubhub are SEO-friendly landing pages. So what's an example of this? So at Pinterest, people actually created content that was available for Google from the start. They would create a board of something they cared about, like wedding ideas. And then that content would have cool wedding dresses, cool venue ideas, et cetera. And then that page would be made public to Google, and it would get indexed, and it might rank for wedding ideas. The problem was that it's one person's opinion as to what's important on the topic. Whereas what we realized over time at Pinterest is that we have the global repin data of now a 200 million person community. So we know what the most popular wedding ideas are across Pinterest, not just one person's opinion. So what we did is we created our own topic pages that look like boards, but they have the highest repinned content on that topic. So this is an example. James Turrell is a popular artist, and these are just the highest repinned images of his on Pinterest. And we make this page available to Google, and it turns out users of Google like this page. It has the best content for James Turrell, which is who they're searching for. not only does it get more traffic than the board pages, it actually converts higher into signups and active users than the board pages. So this is an example of aggregating user-generated content to rank on tons of different topics at scale. But you can do the same with supply-side content. So Grubhub is a marketplace for restaurants that deliver food and people who want to order food. These restaurants give you a bunch of data when they sign up. They give you their menu data. They give you their cuisine data. They give you what they deliver to. So what we did is for every neighborhood, zip code, college, cuisine combination, we would build a page that would show the restaurants that would deliver for that combination. So this is a Nob Hill Chinese restaurants page. And the top of the page is still very focused on the thing you need to do to be successful at Grubhub, which is give Grubhub your address. But as you scroll, you see all the restaurants that deliver Chinese food to Nob Hill. This content is good for users. It's relevant for search engines. And these pages, most of the time, rank #1 on Google when you search any sort of geo food delivery term. And this is not content marketing. This is not me writing a great article about Nob Hill Chinese food. This is literally taking the content that we've gotten from our supply side, which are the restaurants, aggregating it so that it's useful for users, and then doing it at scale across thousands of neighborhoods and thousands of cities. So how would you do this? So the first thing you need to do is you need to aggregate the best content on a page specifically targeting something that's searched on search engines. So how do we figure out what to do that for Grubhub? It's pretty easy. You can tell what neighborhoods are popular, what cuisines are popular. But for Pinterest, across thousands of different topics, we had to look at our internal search data. So if someone's searching healthy recipes on Pinterest, chances are they're searching for that on Google too. But what we would do is we would check. We would go to the AdWords keyword planner, we would upload a list of our internal search queries, and we'd see which ones are actually being searched by Google users as well. If they were searched on Google as well, we'd try to create a page. We then manually check the page to make sure the content was relevant for what was being searched for, and then we turn it on. This went from 0 to 20% of the traffic from Google in a year for Pinterest, and is a meaningful source of signups and active users, and similar results for Grubhub in a shorter amount of time, actually. OK, so that's acquisition. Going back to retention, another lesson I've learned from both Pinterest and Grubhub, and had to learn it twice, was to stop messaging people like I'm a marketer, and that's my background, marketing undergrad, marketing MBA, and to start messaging people like I'm their personal assistant. So what does that mean? Emails can be a key driver of retention, but at every company I've worked at, people didn't want to send email. They're like, oh, people hate email. No, people don't hate email. People hate useless email. If the email actually helps them accomplish what they want to accomplish, they'll like it. But what you have to do is send them things they're going to like. And at Pinterest, I made this mistake. So at Pinterest, my first set of emails that we launched while I was there were educating you on all the things you could do. Here's how to create a board. Here's how to download the app. More people unsubscribed from the download the app email than downloaded the app. It's pathetic. So it's like, OK, this doesn't work. Why don't we actually try reinforcing the value they're finding in the product via the email and reinforce the value instead of try to add new value or try to teach them more things. So instead of setting that download the app email, we said, hey, you signed up looking for home decor content. Here's what's trending in home decor this week. Massive improvements in retention from doing this. The other thing that we had to figure out is not only the right content, but how much of it to send to users. There's a lot of content on home decor. And the right time to send it as well. So if you open emails at Wednesday at 10 a.m., we should probably be sending you the email Wednesday at 10 a.m., not Thursday at 5 p.m. And we had to figure out how to do that across 200+ million users. So we built our own system to do that. And when we did that, we saw exponential gains in the effectiveness of email. The other interesting thing was figuring the right amount of email to send. We had people at Pinterest receiving thousands of emails a week from us. So I'm like, that's probably a mistake, but let me talk to these people and just make sure, understand what's happening. So I'd call them on the phone and be like, hey, did you know you're receiving thousands of emails a week from Pinterest? And they're like, yes. It's like, do you want me to stop that for you? And they're like, no, I actually like receiving that many emails. Turns out some people like the dopamine hit of saying that someone likes your taste all the time. So you have to learn that some users are going to be like that, and some users, if you send them more than one email a month, they're going to get upset. OK. from an email perspective and from a notifications perspective, you want to focus on testing and personalization to get you there, to be that personal assistant. So if you're starting out, it's okay to test manually, like a marketer. So when I started at Grubhub, I pitched our co-founder on a personalized email marketing system for all of our users. And his response was, yeah, definitely not going to build that. So I said, OK, how do I prove it to him that this is worth it? So we're in 3 cities at the time. We were in Boston, San Francisco, and Chicago. So in those 3 cities, I surveyed the entire user base, and I said, what did you want to hear about from Grubhub? And they said they want to hear about new restaurants, and they want to hear about new deals. And I was like, OK, we don't actually have any deals, so scratch that idea. But what we do have are new restaurants that are being added to the platform every day. So what I did is I aggregated 5 new restaurants that delivered to the Boston area, 5 new restaurants that delivered to San Francisco area, 5 new restaurants that delivered to the Chicago area, and emailed that to the entire list until thousands of orders were coming from those emails. Even though they were totally untargeted, there would be like, let's say you lived in Alston, there would be like a Cambridge, restaurant in there. There would be like a Waltham restaurant in there. I would just hope that one of them would actually deliver to you. But we're able to prove out the value of this to then say, hey, let's go invest in a proper email solution. In this case, we used ExactTarget. Let's set up a 60-step process to make sure everyone gets restaurants that deliver to their address instead of just to their city, and city meaning really metro area in this case. Some other things that we learned along the way. Subject lines and calls to action matter a lot. Design does not matter that much. We had one engineer at Pinterest test 4,500 different subject lines on our emails. Hundreds of thousands of additional weekly active users on a regular basis from this work. At a similar time, we spent 3 months redesigning every email in our system. No impact on metrics, literally nothing. So hey, we all felt better, they looked cooler, but it didn't have a metrics impact that we wanted. Okay, last things. So if you're running emails and notifications, you need to think of them as tests that prove an increase in usage over the decrease in people who are going to stay connected to you via emails and notifications. I've talked to a lot of marketers, a lot of growth people that think like emails and notifications are zero risk. Like, oh, the only thing that can happen is more people can use my app. And that's not actually true. People will unsubscribe from your emails, in which case there will be a loss in lifetime value from that, and you should measure what that loss is. In the case of push notifications, if they don't like that push notification, they will rage delete the app, which basically takes your lifetime value to 0. So you need to measure a lift in usage from your emails and notifications versus the lift in unsubscribes and app deletions, and make sure that that equation is positive. Otherwise, you shouldn't be sending that email. So doing that on an email by email basis and a notification by notification basis over time is an important way to improve this channel and make sure you're being a personal assistant and not being a marketer. And that's all the stuff I have. So thanks so much for the time.